Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the iOS Lead Essentials podcast. Here we discuss the strategies in your journey to become a complete senior iOS developer. My name is Bogdan. I'm a senior iOS developer and lead instructor in the iOS Lead Essentials program, the online program for iOS developers who want to become complete senior developers. Today, our special guest is Fabio from Italy, a principal iOS engineer and student of the iOS Lead Essentials program. Hi, Fabio.
Hi, Bogdan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, yeah, just for the audience to understand your journey, can you tell me a bit about your achievements with the programs that we'll be exploring in detail today?
Yes, absolutely. So, trying to do this a little bit myself. So, I've been in this industry for 12 years now. So, I'm a very the dinosaur of the iOS developer. So, this program helped me to just break the plateau I've reached at some point of my career. I think every senior can relate that at some point
Yeah,
you reach some plateau, you can go up. And I found this program on YouTube from the channel that Caio Mike set up. And then I joined it, and it was like a good investment for me.
yeah, and that's awesome. And what about the what your concrete achievements were?
Oh yeah, concrete achievement. Like I learned a different way to build the iOS app, how to reasoning around the architecture, because I believe I would say 90% of the senior iOS developers starting with which framework should I use? What should I use? MVVM, MVP, MVC? I don't think those are the right question. And thanks to the program, I understand how to actually think about of the app from the product and build an app around the business, which is a different approach because we have to make the product scalable uh, and we have to adapt to the business. So
Right.
it helped me a lot. Like it changed the mindset. It was difficult at the beginning, but then thanks to this program, I learned a lot of stuff, hard skill, which is technical part, and absolutely also soft skill, which is very, very important if you want
Awesome.
to if you want to achieve independent good salaries and
Yeah.
good position.
Yeah, and on that note, I know you after switching this mind approach to development, you also achieved like a new position and also
Yeah,
some salary updates. So
yeah,
can you
absolutely.
tell us what like some of the things
Yeah, absolutely.
that
So
happened?
so from the salary perspective, just a jump for almost 3x
Wow.
from what I had previously as a senior iOS, not in this company, but in the previous company. And for the actual technical part, practical stuff, I like learn a lot about architecture and also like the weak points of some technical decisions. So when we're talking in the meetings, like how we should approach to solve this feature, to bank this feature, and we go into technical details, I was able to see something that the others in the team couldn't see, and
Right.
they recognized that, and like they see like I was seeing something at the long run wouldn't scale or wouldn't work for the future or wouldn't work for the business. Um, and then
Right.
also, it's very important, and how also decoupling the stuff in order to test them and make it reusable. And
Right.
this is thanks to the program
Yeah.
because it's a mindset
Of course.
change. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We'll find out more about
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
For now, just if you can, we can clarify for our viewers what's a principal engineer position uh, supposed to do, because I think not a lot of people are used to that. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. I mean, most of the company don't have this kind of position. Maybe they call staff engineer. Sometimes they appointed to the most senior developer
Right.
in the team. But like the principle is basically what the senior does, plus they try to they try to influence the team on discussing the architecture or the testing strategies, how like this feature could help to achieve like this kind of decision, architecture decision, technical decision, would help the business and the stakeholders to achieve a goal. It's very important because you need to make all the team align,
Right.
and it's a mix of team lead and
And architect maybe.
architect. It's something hybrid and depends on the company, to be honest. So there is no like a real definition principle. It's a between architecture and team lead. But yeah,
Awesome.
that's
Awesome. So yeah, overall, I think those are very impressive achievements. Especially, you mentioned your career, like with most seniors getting stuck at some point and then exploding to get all these achievements afterwards. So yeah,
yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And for you watching this podcast, stay until the end to learn how Fabio did it, and you can achieve it too.
Absolutely,
Our
yeah.
goal today is to find replicable steps that others can follow to achieve the same.
Mhm. Absolutely, I agree with you.
So you you mentioned you've been doing iOS for many years now, 12
Yeah,
to be exact, and
yeah.
counting.
In counting,
Uh,
yeah.
is it still challenging for you?
Yep, absolutely, still challenging. It got a little bit easier compared to the past, as you may know. Previous iOS SDK didn't have dispatch framework, didn't have all the nice things that Swift offer,
Yeah,
and so we have to deal with memory management and stuff like
yeah,
that. But it's
it
still
was different.
challenging. Yeah, it was different. It's still challenging. Apple every year introduce new
Yeah,
framework or updates the current framework.
yeah,
I'm thinking about a single weight. So it's just again changing again the the thinking of on
yeah,
the code. Swift UI, it's another thing, with a different approach from UI Kit. So it's still
yeah,
challenging. So you never stop learning. You never reach a point that I know how to deal it because it's always a surprise. Adapt
yeah.
DC. So uh, yeah, it's still challenging. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
fully agree. That's
Yeah.
my experience as well, because I've been doing this for many years too on iOS only. And it's like you said, the fact that Apple keeps changing the platform and evolving it makes us have to learn constantly. So that maybe keeps us engaged and not being like over oversatisfied and just sick of it after a while. Because it's like you said, if we look back at, I don't know, 12, 10 years ago, the developing iOS apps was a lot different and also similar because it like the core idea didn't change, but a lot of the way you express yourself with code changed and the tools. Like so, yeah, at least I like that. Uh,
Oh yeah. Like in the past, there was just one device, so you
yeah,
didn't think about auto layout.
320, right?
Yeah. 320, 480. That's it. That was your.
Everybody knew it. Like
Yeah.
you could do the math in your head already. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
that
I
view
moved.
needs to be.
Yeah. I need to move the frame from 10 pixel now. I know it's going to move that.
Yeah,
Now, then we introduce layout, auto layout, and then sites categories.
yeah.
And yeah.
And again, I think it's good because now we express our intent. Back in the days, we used to maybe hard code, if I can say like that, all the UI positions and dimensions. Now it's like more expressing what you want. So it's maybe more similar to other technologies like I don't know HTML or others that were more flexible, adaptive. So yeah, again, a good change. Back then, we could get away with
Yeah,
hard
absolutely.
coding all these frames and everything, but
Magic numbers
yeah,
everywhere in the code.
yeah. And before iOS development, did you do other development?
Yes, well, I started as full stack developer. So I was mainly a Java developer. So I come from that kind of language where trading was important
Yeah,
because it works on the, let's say, the main thread. So you need to spin up threads. So you need to think about multi-threading programming, and it helped me a lot with mobile because you think about how to run expensive operation to not block the UI, which is important on the small device like a phone. Because on the computer, probably you don't notice if it's got stuck a little bit, but on the device, which limited processor, limited memory, you always think about this thing.
yeah,
Uh, you want to run this operation in a thread. And I remember back in the day, without dispatch, you need to detach a thread and run it and go back on the main thread manually and do your stuff.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it helped me a lot. So I was a full starter. Then I had a chance to work on an iOS project for a business, and you know, then my passion for iOS just match with the professional path because before that I used to develop app with my friend just for fun.
oh yeah, nice.
You always, I think most of the old developers started like that, building some app, exploring this new app store. What was it? What was not? But it was good. It was good run that time.
Yeah,
And
some
then,
of them.
yeah, some of
For
them.
for for me, it was like I was working on macOS, and iOS 2 appeared. There was a like I was working in an outsourcing company. We got a new customer that wanted an iOS app, and the boss comes in to all the Mac developers and says, who's willing to give this a shot? And it's like, okay, I can try it out. Let's see. It
Yeah,
wasn't all a big fuss or anything. It was we just got the first iOS, the first iPhone didn't have an SDK, so you couldn't program any apps. There were just the Apple provided apps, and they weren't many. And this was just the second iteration, and they just introduced the SDK, so it was all new. Not a lot of documentation, to be honest, but yeah, it was fun. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Interesting days.
You try, there's a lot of error, how to solve
Yeah.
it. You don't know. Back in the day, Stack Overflow was not a thing. So,
What
yeah,
I
it was good.
noticed differently and why I liked it immediately was a lot of what the other platforms or my colleagues, because we were a big company, so we had like developers in many areas, working on projects where you couldn't just feel the end result of your work. Whereas with these devices, the feedback was instant. So I would do something and it was immediately visible on the screen, and you could interact with it. Like it was already a touch screen, so you could touch it here and there, drag, scroll, like uh, double tap, whatever. So it felt very tangible. So I said, yeah, this is nice, because I mean, in other platforms, like you said, maybe if you're doing backend development in Java, you don't really get a feel of what you're doing. So you have to run it through some client, or
Sub-client.
look at some JSON or XML formatting. This is more visual, more natural, maybe, I think. So
Or maybe worse, you run the backend through the terminal, so you see a bunch of logs
yeah,
in.
yeah,
So yeah, no, it's a completely different experience. I think it was great.
yeah,
Like switching that thing. I mean, I never regret working on the backend. Actually, I enjoy it. Uh, and, but yeah, like having a device in your hand and tap it and having an instant feedback of what you have
yeah,
wrote like 2 minutes ago is just
yeah,
uncomparable compared to the backend.
yeah, totally.
You feel like you make a difference.
So how did you found out about the iOS Lead Essentials program?
So I was working in a company at that time, and we were building a new screen. And then my team lead said, "Oh, let's think about another way to build the screen because the app was like full of legacy code. Let's build from scratch. Let's think about new way of architecture in this." And then look up. Or I like tutorial on YouTube, to be honest. I like watching them, I like following them. So let's see if there is something from iOS for iOS, because it was such a niche in that time. Um, so just looking on YouTube and get the video from Caio Mike, thinking explaining what MVC, MVVM, um, how to be architects. Like there was an example of, I think it was an analytics app, for
Yeah,
example, architect. Yeah, like that was like in 2018, I think, something like that. So
yeah,
I started looking at the videos, learning how to see the different components of a screen, and I'm thinking, oh, there is a presenter, there is a presentation layer, there is API layer, and then I'm thinking, well, that's what I was doing when I was backend. Why I'm not doing now? Like layering. Why is different from iOS? It's just it's like it's
instant
crazy.
click.
Instant click. Uh, but then still, it was not easy. Like it's not like follow video, copy and paste on the current project. It works as a charm. You need to adapt. You need to make a lot of errors. That's important thing.
Right,
Make a lot of error and don't give up. I mean, what was could happen? You're not gonna whatever. Like you work, you try and you learn. So the error is a learning thing. So I know
totally.
what not to do. So yeah, that's how I discovered Essential Developer, and then they started building the series of the Quiz Up, and I followed that, and I tried to replicate. I tried to make a new app following that principle, like testing the view controller, testing the logic, testing everything. I didn't know I was able to test a view controller, for example, at that time. Like for me, it was just in that time was automation test, which is
Yeah,
now the current UI test.
UI test.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like a game changer. Like it's different. It's
Yeah,
fast feedback.
fast and reliable.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know how to tap a button programmatically in that time. Like you learn a lot of stuff. You learn the detail of your kit, which I
Yeah,
didn't know because I was using storyboards, so I linked the things, and
yeah,
yeah. And then I
nice.
joined the program after because they're starting. I joined the program. I think it was of first or the second cohort.
Oh,
I'm an old
nice.
student as well.
Oh, excellent. So can you remember what were some of the issues you struggled with or what you were looking for when you found out about the
Yeah,
program?
yeah. Like for me, as I say before, like many iOS developers get stuck, like because you're doing the same approach. I think also I'm blaming Apple for this because they always show you one way to do development, and could work in small app, but if you
Yeah,
work in enterprise app, it won't work, won't scale.
yeah,
So, for example, let's say how I architecture the API interaction with external API. So just create the classic API manager. Everybody can relate at that. API
yeah,
manager to instance and calling an endpoint. And then also having a bunch of cocopods around for making the API calls. Why? It was not necessary, all these things. Um, Always follow, MVC, massive view controller. No, no, no. Let's do MVVM. But then you end up having a massive view model.
view model. Yeah,
So so yeah, so I'd say how is that possible? It's always so difficult developing the iOS. And then I've seen the counterpart of Droid. Oh, we can do this view model in a nice way. It's not possible. It has to be some way to develop an iOS app, scalable and joinable and testable. And that's why I started this program. And then
right, right. So yeah, the main things, right? Like architecture
yeah,
and
architecture is the main thing.
testability. Yeah,
Testability, decoupling. That's the main
yeah,
thing that I wasn't looking for. because I coming from a Java backend experience, I was able to, even if I was not the most experienced developer, but with the help of the other developers, I knew that I have something from the database, something for the in-memory database, and then there was this dependency inversion with the interface in between. So
Right.
like how I can achieve that easily, and I can't do it here in iOS, um, and that the program helped me a
Yeah.
lot.
Awesome. And I think that's a great point because I remember this as well. My friends who worked on backend and other technologies used to program differently than I was in iOS. Like it's exactly what you said. Like not having the structure to your code, like putting everything in the view controller or in the cell or in any class that's at hand, and not having an architecture. Actually, I think if you only have a few files and everything is super coupled together, you can say you don't have an architecture.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
probably true. So
You have this code repetition everywhere
yeah,
because you always do the same thing, and then you try to extract in a class, and then you instantiate your class into your view controller because you can really do like a dependency injection through initializer less because if you use storyboards or something
yeah,
like that. But
yeah,
then with the program you learn how to get around this
yeah.
even using storyboards.
Exactly,
uh, yeah.
exactly. So you mentioned the elephant in our iOS world, the massive view controller. Do you remember what was the issues you had with that? Because I know everybody's blaming like, yeah, a massive view controller is super bad and you want to stay away. But if you start to have a conversation about it, not a lot of people understand why it's bad. So I'm curious from your, like, now you have a big experience with this. What was not working with the massive view controller?
Okay, so I have an experience, direct experience with that. Like it's classic collection view that has a picture for loading asynchronously from some website. So everybody, like if you have one view controller with collection view, and then you just have a bunch of elements in the collection view. You're scrolling, you have this flickering while you're scrolling, this not smooth experience,
Yeah,
and then the picture's loading, and then just a swap with another cell because lost the reference or usability of the cell. And that's increased the complexity exponentially because you have API call in the main view controller, and then you have API call to get the images in each cell.
yeah,
So that was one of the experience of every day of my iOS developer experience. And then actually the one of the problem is we don't think that MVC doesn't mean you have one class. You can have tiny MVC and have MVCs
yeah.
altogether. Composition is the key, and I don't think we learn this in when we start the journey as iOS developer. I don't think
Mm.
Apple will have a say to you in the documentation or compose tiny MVC. I think they take it for granted. You know that you can have multiple MVC working
I I
together.
I think they didn't maybe anticipate how how big the screens will get. So I
Yeah,
remember this because in the first versions of the SDK, you couldn't add a child view controller to another
exactly.
view controller. So, and even their examples, like they use one view controller per screen. And I guess we kind of followed along that line. We never
Mhm.
thought about decomposing. And I think it was maybe iOS 4 or 5, something around there, when they added the add child, remove child view controller. So you could actually split your large screen view controller into multiple smaller ones, like you said, which now we both know
We won't.
it's the way to go, and it can work pretty well on any app if you do it like that. But if you're trying to squeeze everything, like a super big feature, in one view controller, then yeah,
Yeah.
it's that massive pattern
Yeah,
we
it's a good
know.
point. I mean, that in that period was also device has limited resources, so you couldn't afford to have an app that do a lot of things. Apps that do a lot of things. So that's why it was okay having one view controller per screen, but now it's like for even medium app, it's not okay. It's not scalable.
Yeah,
Small
yeah,
app maybe, but has to be like probably 2 or 3 screens, no more.
right.
But still, you know.
Did you ever have tests for one of these huge view controllers? I know you said you didn't know how to write unit tests for them, but did you have like UI tests for them?
There was a couple of UI tests, but they were flaky. They
Right.
just failed randomly sometimes, or maybe like you do a little change and just failing, just
Yeah.
start failing. So the sub point we just disabled that from the
Right.
CI.
Well,
So it
well,
was pointless.
yeah. I asked you because I remember at least a few cases where we had massive view controllers in the project, and of course we had UI tests because nobody knew how to unit test a view controller. And we had so many tests for the same view controller because there's so many things happening on the same screen. Like you said, it's like images loading and pagination and put refresh and different layouts, different things moving. And we had many tests, and the setup, I remember the setup for each test was huge because it has so many dependencies. And sometimes just you, of course, we we found out the hard way that doing
Yeah.
network calls from UI test is not a good idea. So
No.
we mocked that. But back then it was, we used the third party library to mock all the network responses and inject some JSON into it. Um, but still, like the setup was huge, so
Yeah.
you could, like, working with those tests was incredibly hard and maintaining. So very, very complicated scenario. Also, reusability was non-existent because everything was like there was no way to reuse just a piece. Like, let's say you
Mhm.
need to build another list with images, and you just need to handle that. Like, there's no way to extract only that because it's coupled with the exact network call and with the way you do prefetching, and all the other features are there.
I know.
So
I know.
yeah,
I
so
know. I know. I remember like one of the view controller I used to work with, and to try to test them, we just extract the logic into a function, and then on the test level, we just instantiate view controller, and then we call that method, even if it was an internal, a
yeah,
private implementation, private logic, but just
yeah,
to have some, I don't know, safe.
yeah,
I
to
don't
be
know,
able to
like just
test.
to
Yeah,
test, but that was not the way because we extracted logic that's supposed to be hidden.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the advanced desired situation. But yeah, sometimes when you have that massive thing and you want to start testing it, you, like, that's one strategy, at least I know. uh,
Yeah, that's one strategy, but it was just one, and I couldn't go
yeah,
after
no,
that. Like,
yeah,
how can I go after? Like, should I extract this in a class? I could, but then how can I inject into the view controller? Like all this stuff.
yeah,
Like, and then we end up the same problem, composition. So I didn't have that knowledge at that time. I didn't
right.
think about that.
So yeah, I guess a lot of people will relate to the massive view controller problem. You struggle with that, you struggle with uh, architecture and testing. And so yeah, then you, like you said, you found out about the program and decided to join. um, can you can you share with me how you decide to join, and if you have any second thoughts, if you
Okay, so how did they say to join is after that that course, like let's say like the Quiz Up playlist, and
serious?
then
Yeah,
they created the first videos of the course they publish on YouTube, and absolutely I wanted to join because they it's just become interesting,
yeah,
and okay, like singleton is necessary, like it's all these questions that I was asking myself, but I didn't have an answer. I couldn't find anything on internet, so just follow the guys and just join the program. And I remember it was just a few videos of the networking layer, and then I was following Eager every day or every week. I don't remember now how often they publish video, but I remember like I was like, oh my god, the new video is published. I was looking at watching that video. Yeah, I didn't have any second thoughts. I think it was like worth it every penny. To be honest,
Awesome.
it's one of the recommendation I do is invest in your education if you want to like break that
Yeah.
plateau. Just
Yeah.
don't think about, oh, it's expensive. It's not, because then the return is 100 times at that
Yeah.
price. Yeah.
That's a
So
very good point, because if you don't make these investments, it's at some point it's very hard to grow organically on your own if you don't invest or get help, get mentoring, um, all these things you get from the program. So very good point.
absolutely, you need to educate yourself. It's like every aspect of your life. It's not just programming. It's just, I don't know. You want to learn about how to manage money. You just sign up with some budgeting course and or read books and
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, reading books is also super valuable. It's just that sometimes it's hard to translate that information into your particular context or language, or maybe if you're reading a book on that's reading on a written on a different technology, then you have to translate it, let's say. So it can be harder to get the results.
Well, Caio Mike did that for us, so
Yeah,
why not?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the point. 'Cause, when I was reading some of these books, which are fundamental to our um, teaching, is they they aren't that easy to immediately put into Swift and our platform limitations or context. Not everything applies immediately. You have language features and other things you have to consider when you apply or transform these techniques. So, but yeah, great experience. Okay, so um, you mentioned how you did it. It's pretty interesting because I never spoke to a student from the initial cohorts
Mm.
that that were studying along with the lectures being published. So I understand that's a bit different than how we did it, the later cohorts, because of course I was a student too before becoming an instructor. So for us, it was more like you had all the curriculum up front, and you know everything you're gonna see. So, but I'm curious, what process or what approach did you take to studying these lectures? Did you? I don't know. I'll let you tell me because I don't want
Okay.
to ask questions.
So first of all, I give you like one of the tip. Also, Caio and Mike gave in the program is to watch the video a higher speed, because if it's not your main language English, um, then you need to be focused on what they say. So you just increase the speed of the video. Just one recommendation I would do. I would say I'm not the type of guy take notes. I don't like that because keep me distracting. I never done it in the university. I never done that. So I like to watch first, try to understand what they are explaining, and I'm reading then the notes down the video, the comments, because it's very useful
Yeah,
looking at the comment, because there are a lot of questions that people ask
yeah,
that that very useful, because you think those questions it's already there. So,
yeah,
and then also the search on the top left. If you're looking for something like core data, you're finding bunch of videos and
yeah.
comments and
You find all
threads
the
and
lectures that mention
core
that.
data, for
Yeah,
example. Um, that's one thing. And then I try to make after, I don't know, the networking model, the network module. I open a new Xcode project and get a free API out of there in the web, and try not focus on the UI, but just how to try to organize the API layer, how to interact with the screen, how to not decouple the view controller with the API. which
Right.
is one of the struggle I had in the past. Because I say, how can I call an API from a screen without having a
A strong
singleton,
dependency.
a
Yeah.
song dependency, a singleton over there, you know?
Yeah.
And and then many times I just open Xcode and say, "Oh God, completely forgot how to start it." And then okay, then go back on the program, watch it again, all the modules for the networking, and try to remember. Okay, texting strategy using URL protocol. This kind of stuff. If you keep
Yeah. Yeah.
forgetting, watch it again, go back on your code and try. But at least watch once because you don't want to like. This is my experience. Of course, works for me, but doesn't mean it works for the other. For the others, so for me, not taking notes, watching the video, try to watching the video in higher speed than normal. Try to figure out what they are trying to teach you, Kai and Mike, in that video. Read the notes, read the comments. If you have a question, ask in the thread. Um, but I'm pretty sure the question you have in your mind is already there in the thread,
Yeah.
and then ask the community Slack. That is beneficial over there. It's just crazy. The waiting time for an answer is
Yeah.
it's yeah crazy. It's better than the Stack Overflow. So
Totally.
yeah, just use Slack a lot as well. Like interact with the other guys in the community because probably they have already this experience and they are willing to share with you. That's my approach.
Awesome. I like, so first of all, the approach is very interesting, especially since you try to apply it to a project that wasn't exactly the same as the one you saw in the lectures. So you're trying to figure out on your own how to apply the concepts you learned. And yeah, about Slack, I mean, I'm a huge fan of that community we have there. I like the fact that the, there are instructors like myself and others that moderate these threads, so we make sure the information is not wrong when it's presented by, because any student can answer to any of the questions, but we make sure it's point on, or we link the documentation or something like that. So it's like you said, it's a very useful tool to have this feedback, and especially fast feedback on decisions you need to make. And that's the thing which in parallel I dislike about Stack Overflow, because there, I mean, I'm a developer that used it many times, but
Still,
over there, there's no guarantee. Like, I don't know who's posted that message. I need to look it up, see if is it valid. Like, do they know what they're speaking about, or I'm just following blindly and then gonna
copy
hit the
paste.
wall. Yeah, exactly. So
It's
that's
classic. Yeah.
that's very important to me. But yeah, okay, I understand. Very original approach to learning these. And just curious, how did you do that for, I don't know, like a specific time each day, or
Well, when I joined the program, so every time there was a new video, I just spent 2 hours. I mean, you need to find the time.
right?
So I don't believe in the things I don't have time, because if you don't have time, it doesn't mean like you don't have actual time. You don't give the right priority. It depends on you.
Exactly.
Like, so I myself, I gave the high priority on this because I want to get unstuck on where I was. Uh, and yeah, at that time I was like studying for each video a couple of hours, like each new video, just looking and looking and try to understand, reading, and then looking on internet if there was something else about that argument. So I spent from 1 hour to an hour, depends on the argument, to be honest. Um,
Right.
for
And
example, sorry, so for example, for the persistency module, core data, I was very rusty. I didn't completely forgot about core data because the last time I used was, I don't know, the first version of core data, so I don't even remember. Um, and like I had to go on the documentation of Apple, looking at what's new, the core data. Because unfortunately, in my professional experience, the company didn't use core data at all. So then I started learning a new framework. For me, it was just a new framework
Yeah.
because it's completely changed from the last time I used. Yeah, depends really from 1 to 2 hours every day that time.
Cool. So doing it at least 1 hour a day, maybe two. How long
Yeah.
did it take to finish all the lectures or the program?
Well, it takes the time they publish. So actually, I don't remember. I think probably 1 year ish when they finish all the program and they start then publish the live session in that time. But yeah, it took a year, took a year to
Right.
finish the program once, and then I started over again.
Okay.
Yeah, like watching it, even in like passively watching. It's it's a, anyway. You already watch it, so you know what they are talking about. But it's just to refresh your knowledge of what
Yeah.
you learn, because it's easy to forget because it's such a lot of information in the
Yeah.
course,
Exactly.
and
And there are details you
the
don't
very there's yeah,
see the
exactly,
first time. Yeah.
like the same patterns you didn't think about to use, how to compose. Composition was one of the hardest part to grasp, because how can I compose two different things together? And you learn the adaptive part, and it's just a massive
Yeah.
program. There's such a lot of things there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen, like, the first time I heard Kai and Mike say, watch it again after you finish. I was like, yeah, maybe I don't need to do that because uh, I'm senior. But once I did, there was all these details there which I never saw the first time. And I think it's partially, like you said, just making sure you're constantly exposing to those concepts, so you keep making the transformation of the way you work. But it's also because in different times you are focused on different things. So perhaps when you did the program first time, you were focusing on architecture and testing, and the second time you were focusing on a different thing you had at that time, maybe decoupling and reusing. So by just making that switch, when you watch the same content, you have a different mindset and you ask yourself different questions. So that's super
Yeah,
valuable. I heard a lot of students do that, and with great results.
yeah, absolutely.
Which made me think, and I actually now I move this process to other things I learn as well. So if I, for instance, read a book and it's, yeah, a good book, and I know there are many things there to learn, I don't stop reading it one time. I go back after
Mhm.
maybe a while, and it's amazing how this process works. So awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy now when I read a book on a different language. I know now how, okay, in iOS is like this. The concept is that. But maybe in this language you do differently, in
Yeah.
iOS you do another way. It's great. But then when you rewatch it because you had some experience working on the code on your side project, or even when I which I did, is to apply this thing a day-to-day job slowly into that code base, because you work with a team and you need to explain. That's another good thing from the course. You're gonna learn soft skill, like how to coach the team, how to uh, talk and explain the thing. It's very important, because it's like explaining to an audience that don't know what you're talking about. So you can't take it for granted. It's sometimes very frustrating in the beginning.
Yeah.
So be patient with yourself and with the others. Sometimes I got heated and like, oh, why did I understand? Like it's so easy, so like, but that's not the reality. Some people need time, as you need a time. I need a time to get this knowledge. I took a year to take it, at least the base of this knowledge. So why I'm expecting the other people to in the team to get this knowledge? So
Right.
you learn this. You learn during the course. I mean, looking at the mentoring session, like many people on the call are just staring at Caio and Mike, but Caio and Mike were able to get around and try to explain, and then they click it. So it's very important. It's a skill that you don't build in just watching
Yeah.
videos. That's it. You need to
Yeah.
learn. You need to practice. So yeah, this is not
And
just about technical stuff. So it's about also soft skill. That's why it's
yeah,
important, like investing
totally.
in education. Yeah.
Totally. I get what you're saying, because when you try to go back to your team and teach them basically some of the things, they force you, because I mean, unless you are prepared with strong examples, with good reasoning, with, like, they're not gonna be say, oh yeah, that's amazing, let's do it. Like, at
Mm.
first they're gonna be, but I'm maybe reluctant to changing the way I work. So did you consider this aspect or that aspect, or how are we gonna deal with this problem? And uh, that forces you, like, the first transformations is on yourself, because they force you to redo the redo the thinking in your head, and maybe bring better examples, or um, go back and research a bit on some of the issues they raise. So that's essential to a deep learning process. It's just the, I don't know, the first level where you are exposed to some concept, you say, yeah, it's amazing, and then when you're trying to uh, teach it to someone else, then it starts this dialogue, and that, I think that has a lot of value. So you doing that definitely helped you as well solidify these ideas. Um,
Yeah, he helped me to get to what the promotion,
exactly,
the
exactly.
role, because that role is like you need to have this kind of skill. I'm still not perfect, absolutely. Like I'm not denying that most of the time I'm still struggling with this thing, but I'm learning and not
Yeah,
giving up. So I'm lucky to have a company that allow me to do that, because I can understand some company don't do that. Like, oh, we have to release, we have to ship. My advice on that is to try to find a better company, but I know it's difficult. Depends on the situation that everybody has, personal situation. So I can't really say that. But if you are working on, I don't say toxic environment. Let's say an environment doesn't fit you, then
yeah,
probably that's why it's good to educate yourself, because then you can go to another company that require uh, like higher level developers, so like
right,
senior developers. So just
right.
educate yourself. It's very, very, very important.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of the companies that have like a non-ideal work environment are just non-educated on different ways to building software and what the outcomes are. So they usually don't have bad intentions. It's just that they don't know. So if you are, for instance, saying like, we need to refactor, like, stop developing features for 2 months because we need to refactor it. So of course, it's just not going to be open to that, right?
Of
Or
course.
if you say like, I can do a feature in 2 days, or if I add tests, I'll do it in 5 days, right? Then of course, again, they will say, why do the tests? It's because you're not speaking the language that your boss speaks, like financial language. If you go to your boss and say, okay, we can go a while without writing tests, but at some point, adding new features or maintaining the code base will become very hard, and you'll actually be losing money. So every time you need to add something, you will pay more and more on the same development. Like, it should take me 2 days to do it now. In half a year, it should take me 2 weeks, because I need to change a lot of the other uh, components to be able to fit that in. And if you speak that language, they say, oh, okay, that's interesting. So tell me more, or let's find a balance between these, or so
Maybe
it really depends, because a lot of times as developers, and that's some of the things you see in the program as well, and in the book as well, the Lead Essentials book, Caio and Mike also wrote, is how to deal with this, how to talk to your team, not only as a developer, but as a person that understands financial implications, business, and all the other hats that we wear nowadays. So this is super important. Some of the times I think is, or I saw actually teams transform the way they work because somebody spoke on the same on the same language, and business people are not that crazy anymore. It's like, oh, okay, let's think about this. Let's what do you need to do? What do you need? It's very,
Yeah,
very different. Because I mean, everybody wants to do the same things, right? Deliver quality on time as fast as possible and stay in the market as long as possible,
if
right?
possible. Yeah,
So
no, no,
it's
absolutely agree. And it's important what you said about speaking the same language of the stakeholder. And yeah, you mentioned also another great resource, which is the book they gave it for
yeah,
free. It's crazy in the program. So yeah, they helped me a lot. Also, the book, reading it, how to understand the business, how to speak to them. Because you
yeah,
really, as you said, you can say, "Oh, I need to refactor this. Needs like 3 days." I say, what does it mean refactoring? I don't care. Like, what is the product?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Because it's the language.
it's language.
Uh,
Yeah, you
yeah,
say if you do an investment now, you spend a little bit more in developing, and you pay, of course, more money now. But then in the future, you're gonna pay less. Then okay, let's do it because they know they're gonna save money in the future.
yeah. So those are, I guess, once you get your technical skills in a better shape, then you start to bring all these other areas of improvement as well.
You need to,
How
yeah,
to talk to your team, how to negotiate, how to, I don't know, build a build a case for something. You take more ownership. At some point, you stop asking, "Should I refactor this? Should I add
you
tests?
do
Should
it.
I do this?" Like, no, this is how we work. Like, we're professionals, so you're not gonna ask your boss if you use a struct or a class. Like, why
They
should
don't
you ask
care.
if it's a technical detail. You're supposed to be the
and
expert, but we yeah, so a lot of these things come as well with the technical knowledge. So
and then actually another advice I give during the work: do testing yourself. Don't ask, do it.
yeah,
And when I still open a, I don't know, you want to call merge request or put request, your team is going to see that code. It's going to ask, why, how did you do that? How, oh, that's very interesting. Oh, that's cool. They're going to comment out in a positive
yeah,
way your code, and then they're going to ask you to maybe do a tech talk. And it happened to me
yeah,
in this
yeah,
company I'm working on. So um, they are very, very eager to learn of what I've done. Like, do it.
yeah,
Don't wait for an approval from an engineer manager or some product manager. They won't give it to you.
exactly.
Just do it. I mean, if you know that you're gonna go fast and well, do it. That's the advice. Also, another advice I could give.
So, and yeah, just to augment on that, I noticed that in some companies, or at least in some situations, maybe there are other teams on other platforms that are not, for instance, in my case, they were not uh, proficient with testing. So once word spread around that, hey, the iOS guys are doing a great job on testing their code and have self-testing code and setup that allows fast delivery and all of that, then they reached out and said, okay, can you tell us more how you're doing this? Um, like we tried this and that and didn't work. So you can help your company, not just your team, your in your area, but in other areas as well. So it's like sometimes the transformations that happen over time, they're
Yeah, you need to be
incredible. Like,
patient.
yeah,
You can change the dynamic of a team in 1 week.
no,
Maybe it takes years
yeah,
to change that. And then if you try to do that, they do the same as you did, and they probably uh, they discover something else you didn't know, and you're gonna learn. So it's
yeah,
just a continuous
yeah,
uh, learning and process.
yeah.
So
But I like what you said, like that idea of doing it. So instead of trying to convince everyone, just do a
you don't have
bit
to.
and show it off. Like, okay, this is what we can achieve if we test drive a feature, for instance.
Yeah,
Just,
you don't have to.
just
You don't have
yeah,
to wait. You are the
exactly,
professional here.
exactly. Exactly. And I guess that's that confidence you get by, I don't know,
That
using
takes
testing and over time.
took
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and thanks to the course, of course, because I know how to decouple and inject the all components and tested them separately. And
So we mentioned in the beginning some of the issues you had when you joined, like with overall architecture, but also decoupling uh, components, testing. How do you feel the program helped you with this?
Oh, it helped me like a lot. Like uh, just just how to way to organize the code base, how to way to split the responsibility, like the famous solid principle, like how you apply on the code base,
Yeah,
and the key of the single responsibility principle helped me a lot to decouple the classes from the code and create small components that does one thing and well back tested.
right.
And the program showed that, like, if you follow in order the lecture, you're going to see the progression, especially during the last module, the main module, where they go, sorry, the UI module, where they go into from MVM, MVC, MVP. You're going to see a lot of logic in there, but then slowly they move out this thing. It's
Yeah,
just a process you need to follow that in order, start uh, have for myself doing a side project to try to replicate the the kind of lesson that Caio and Mike uh, try to do. It's just crazy, and the program just had me a lot to switch mindset on this.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's it was invaluable.
Awesome, awesome. And let's talk a few minutes about the achievement we mentioned in the beginning, because I know I'm curious, and probably the audience as well. So, for let's talk about the lead principal position you currently have, and how long did it take to achieve the position and the salary increases after you started? How was that?
Uh, Took probably a good 3 years, because when I started, it's just a coincidence. I started the course and then I start learning more, because with that position I had, I could achieve just a seniority level, and I know the range more or less in Ireland. What is it? And so I know I couldn't go further in the salary and also career expectation. So I started learning this process. It took 3 years from 2019 until I got promoted in 2022. Um,
Right.
so for me, it took this amount of time, because then, thanks to the course, and then I increased my knowledge. I educated myself. I switched company to what I am right now, because I know it was a good fit for me, for what I was learning, and what they provide,
Yeah.
what they are looking for. So it was a good match. And then, continue to follow the course, apply to the day-to-day job, talking with colleagues, fighting with colleagues. Uh, but then I got there. It took a
Right.
little bit of time. It's not just about technical, to be honest, for this role. It's other things.
No,
As I
I totally get it, because once you, like, maybe in the beginning of the career, it's easier to, it takes less time to
to be
achieve
senior,
the
yeah,
next step. But once you get to that seniority, and especially
it's
with what we discussed, so a principal position is just not about seniority, it's also about leading, about architecting, about having different responsibilities in the team. So definitely achieving that takes more time, because you've got to build more skills. It's not just writing
absolutely.
your own code. You have to think about the overall implications in the company's business, and uh, talk to them, talk to managers, lead your team. So that definitely, it makes a lot of sense to need more time to build those up. Um,
Yeah, the more you go up, the difficult is to go like on the next level.
right,
So, like, just have to be patient and learn every day.
right.
Can stop learning. Sorry, like,
That's the
if you
trick.
stop learning, it's
You're
just like, if you
deprecated.
you deprecate it in a while. Especially now, it's just go fast. Like,
Yeah,
every year there is a new thing. It's just crazy, the progression of, especially in the iOS. So, uh, don't stop learning. Do like, wait, let's say you have to go to the gym, and it's the same, right? You just get 31 hour a day to the gym to get fit. It's the same. If you don't
Yeah.
go to the gym, you eat bad, then you get unfit, and it's the same. You need to to hit well. Like you need to learn in the program or reading books or anything, and then you train. So you practice what you do. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing, and you need to find the time to do that. 1 hour a day, 30, even 30 minutes, or start building up these habits because it's very important if you wanna get unstuck from the your seniority level, or you can't reach the seniority level because you feel like a mid senior and you can go
Right.
further. It's the same concept.
Cool. I'm curious, reaching a principal position, does do you feel like your life has changed after that, or is it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I'm
It's
curious how you
changed.
felt that change. Yeah.
Uh, well, the beginning I feel like okay, I got this role, but then you know your responsibility like it's completely changed. So it's like exploring a new world. Now you're dealing more with probably the CTO, or you're dealing more with the manager. You
Yeah.
go cross team, so you're not working in one team anymore. Uh, you have the super visor of the code base, and you try to do tech talks and try to influence the team, try to explain pros, try to give solution, try to it's it's completely different from a senior. But again, depends on the company, because some company doesn't have this, and then you probably you are in another company, you're still senior, but you do the same exact thing, but
Yeah.
probably your salary is completely different from another senior developer in the
Yeah.
company. So I also like advise to not get stuck with the title, because really depends on the company. They can call you a superstar iOS developer. Doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
mean,
Or
it's
evangelist.
evangelist, yeah, advocate or something. Depends. Um,
Yeah.
so don't get stuck with the title. Don't think about the title too much. Think about the responsibility you have every day, and
Exactly.
that's what you describe your role.
Right. And how would you say you managed to achieve this new position and the increases in salary? I mean, of course, learning new skills was a part of that, but other than that, what did you do, or what did you have to do to get these?
Oh yeah, you have to work with your company. So of course you work with your manager. That I talk about my experience. We set up like uh, what's it called, a career development.
Yeah.
Um, so you just do. It's not like a checkbox thing, but it's just a guidelines of what you should achieve to get to that role. Because again, depends on the company, and we just try to do like one-to-ones with the manager every month to see how the progression was and get feedback. It's very important. So having a one-to-one with the manager, or someone was a lead in that time,
Right.
directors, or yeah. So
Did
that's
you, what was it, more the case of you asking for these things,
um,
or did they come up with them? Like,
no. In my case, I was asking
okay,
to go at the next level. Um, Sometimes it happened automatically, but that case I asked because I felt there was no kind of position for iOS, so I just asked if it's possible to have
right,
that kind of role, and they say yes. So that start building a career path.
right, awesome.
But yeah, but depends,
I think
really
that's,
depends on the comp. Sometime you talk with the manager, say no, you just work, and then we see like in the next year if you
yeah.
can I get promoted or not. But for my case, it was like we talk with the manager. We was a constant one-to-one, constant feedbacks. So
Yeah, that's the thing, because I noticed, and it was the case for me too. And sometimes you feel maybe unsure. You know you should be getting something like a promotion or more money or something like that, but on the other hand, you're not entirely sure that you deserve it. So you're in this tough spot. And yeah, we also talk about that in some of the mentoring sessions, how to handle these. But I know a lot of people, and like I said, I used to have issues there when you just didn't know. So I use this example of yours to, and I think this helps a lot to understand that, yeah, you need to know your worth and ask for stuff when it's the right time. Because I mean, your interest is probably like you're the only one which has the same interest as you. If I don't know, that sounds maybe stupid, but if you understand that your manager and your teammates have different agendas than yours, and you have to advocate for what you want, um, and understand where you are, where you want to get, all these things. And it's very important, like you said, to go out there and speak up, to talk to your manager constantly about these things, not only in the annual review, but in any conversation. Just keep an eye on, okay, are we moving in the right direction? Are we making progress? What's the next step? I would like to get there. That kind of a narrative. So that's super valuable.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to speak up. Speak up is very important in this industry. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how like you need to speak up. You need to ask, demand. I mean, I don't deny I'm still having the imposter syndrome like haunting me, but I mean, it doesn't mean you don't deserve it. You're not worth it, but you need to talk. I mean,
yeah,
what the worst thing could happen? They say,
yeah,
"Oh no, we don't have this role here." Okay, fine. So how can I improve in the company in some other way? And then you start talking, you start
yeah,
exploring, and then if you think you reach the maximum in the company and you can progress, then you need to look around.
yeah. But even in that case, it's I
It's
think it's fair when you reach that uh, conclusion together. So you say, okay, that's the natural progression. You kind of need to move to a different setup to continue growing, and we cannot give you that here. So it's, for me, that's a super fair approach, as opposed to just, I don't know, uh, deciding that on your own. So I always like
exactly.
to have the conversation going, because then they know. And it's like you said, sometimes there's not a clear uh, recipe.
No,
Right? You say, I
absolutely. You
want
don't
I
know.
want this, and say, okay, we don't have this position, but okay, let's work on it. Like, can we, like, they give you an alternative, you say if it's in the right direction or not. So things can go in many directions, depending, like, if you talk about them. If you don't, it's,
Yeah, they probably didn't think about their role at
yeah,
all in the team. And then they
yeah,
say, well, let's wait a second, let's see what the other teams do, and
yeah,
then figure out, okay, there are principal in the other team. So, okay, let's work on it. Let's see if we need a principal and if you can be a principal. I mean,
right. Yeah, this for me, this is super valuable advice. So I wish I knew this when I was younger.
I,
uh,
I learned it the hard way.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Right. Let's talk a bit about the main lessons learned, the main takeaways you got from the program. Because again, everybody gets different things. So, what were they for you?
Okay, so the first thing, I just increased my tech knowledge like exponentially. And then the other thing is the soft skill. That was like, I think now is the main thing because without that, I don't think you can really progress that much.
Yeah.
Look, just to watch the mentoring session. Okay, the topic is important, the mentoring session, but look how they do the mentoring session. Caio, Mike, learn how they deal with when the other person on the other side like it got lost on what they're saying on when they try to rewrite a piece of code or something, and
Yeah.
they always find a way to make it clear,
Yeah.
give you good advice. Um, that's very important.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I got.
Very good point. Because now that you mention it, I was part of some of these mentoring sessions, and indeed, they not only have the soft skills, but they pay super close attention to the
To the reaction, maybe.
guest. Yeah,
Yeah.
so how they react, if they look like they understand what they're saying or not. Sometimes you go back and like maybe try a simpler example. So it's very much like teaching in school. If you had a great teacher, they did all of these things, like try to, because teaching is a two-way street. It's not just that I say the things that you need to do and that's it. I need to have a feedback loop where I make sure you understand, and if not, like try to attack it from a different angle or simplify it or bring a maybe a sometimes a example from real life is very helpful. So yeah, that's very important. And like you said, soft skills, which as developers we don't develop that much until we get to this point where we can progress without them.
Absolutely, yeah, it's very, very important. Um, because otherwise, technically, you can grow, but then you get again stuck at some point in your career
Yeah.
because you don't have that kind of skill that you need to go in. Even if like you want to be an engineer manager or something, um, or you want to be a tech lead, so you go individual contributors path, or you want to go in the manager path, managing path. So you need to learn that. Otherwise, you'd be like, okay, you are a great senior developer. You okay? It's good technically, like you solve problems. But that's it. Then it's a senior, of course, but you know can progress further.
So now we've mentioned a lot of, I don't know, techniques, principles, um, avoiding any patterns like the massive view controllers or that thing. So mm, I'm curious from a senior developer with your experience working in this way with all these principles and techniques. What's the biggest advantage, or where does it pay off to do it like this? Where do you think is the biggest gain?
The biggest gain is the pinpoint the bug. Where is it exactly? When it happens, you know where to look at. You don't have to scroll 1,000 line of code of massive view controller, put the breakpoint, try to run the app and
Yeah.
see. Uh, Even sometimes I end up like on the debugger changing the variable to make it happen some condition and
Yeah.
see if it crash or not. But now
We
you
all did
know,
that.
yeah, you know it's a there. You write a test to prove that. You know how to do it because they show in the course. And the test failed, you fix it, you run the test, and you know you didn't break the other part of the code base. And that's the payoff immensely because if you think about if you change something in the some singleton because some view controller that use that singleton has an error, then you change something in the singleton. You don't know if other view controllers that use that singleton will break or not.
Yeah.
It's just that's one of the payoff. The second one is reusability. You can reuse the same code in a different scenario. The third one is the scalability because you can start composing and start increase the code base exponentially without affecting the productivity and it's not time consuming at all.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just crazy like the the
Yeah.
the the gain you get from the course, like learning how to do it. There is no this way. You learn the concept and then you adapt.
Of course.
That's another good thing you need to think about it. Like it's they show probably one way to do it, but you need to learn the concept behind that,
Right.
which is important. And it takes time. Like you need get practice, maybe watch the video 2 or 3 times, 1 hour a day. It's It's just practice and try
Yeah.
to apply that in work.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I wasn't saying that there's a golden recipe for everything. It's more
Absolutely.
like when you make the switch, and we talked about it, when you make the switch about making your code testable, reusable, you follow the solid principles, you test drive your implementation, all these things. I see them as a recipe because they all are interconnected. Like I cannot get testability if I don't have separation of concerns and dependency injection, and all these things are related. So if you apply all of these things together, then I think you work in a specific way. Even though, like you said, it has variability, it ex- like adapts to every situation in a different way. But I guess the core, the way we work is kind of the same. We just use different solutions because we have a bag full of patterns and techniques. And
Exactly. You need to build your framework,
yeah,
your own framework. So, and then you apply the concept on a specific scenario.
you know, awesome. Any advice for the audience?
Speak up. That's
Yeah,
my main advice. Speak up in for
nice.
everything, like technical. Talk with your manager about your career. Talk about like speak up. That's
Yeah,
the main thing. I've seen a lot of developers don't speak up and they don't say their opinion. They are afraid to make mistake. I made a lot of mistake when I spoke up, but nothing happened. Nobody
yeah,
fired me or
exactly.
killed me. You know,
And that's how
like
you learn, right?
yeah,
You make a mistake, somebody tells you, hey, that's wrong. And it's like,
that's wrong.
okay,
Like what you're saying, like okay, and then you address it. The
right.
important thing is not take it personally, and also like just speak up. Like that's the main thing, and then educate yourself. It's regardless. This course is for specific for iOS. It's invaluable. I think it's the best investment you can do, and books, a lot of books. Uh, Also, I like YouTube. So like now it's there are tons of video like of programming out there, and try to learn also what the other language do.
Yeah,
Don't stop like just in Swift. Also, like I know someone now is gonna say, ugh, but try to learn how also React Native does. Like it's the idea behind React Native, or you can do easily with now with Swift UI and composition. And you can do that. You can achieve that. Try
yeah.
to learn how C Sharp do the dependency injection. This kind of stuff you need to learn. Like
Once you
just
get more senior,
it's more C, of
yeah,
course, yeah. Just explore the other panorama of the
yeah.
panorama of the languages and the frameworks and
I agree. I think that's great advice. What I would add to it is the disclosure that make sure you learn from people who know what they're talking about. So, because on
absolutely,
YouTube, there's again like on Stack Overflow, all
of course,
all
you need
people
to.
can post. So just make sure they're proficient with that technology. And of course, there's once you kind of explored what are the trends in iOS development and how are our experts doing things. Yeah, going rogue in other languages and platforms can also increase because you can get some interesting ideas. But yeah, I guess once you're more senior, and that can help as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Of course, yeah, I took it for granted. You need to check your source and
yeah,
you need to figure out who are the guys talking to,
yeah.
like how they are good in the community.
Yeah, from my personal experience, now I remember this. Um, I had a time where I kind of felt de- demotivated with iOS. So I went to my manager and said, okay, is there anything else I can do for a while just to reboost my energy? And I ended up on a project with a friend where we're doing backend using distributed Hadoop systems, and like I wrote Java services, and it was great because it gave me an opportunity to learn some different things. And I also, when I got back to iOS, I was back to being curious again, being as wanting to apply some of the things I learned. And yeah, that's a great opportunity as well. So it yeah, it depends, I guess. When you do, like, you work in a technology for a while, you sometimes get these ups and downs, and
Oh yeah,
there are many
absolutely.
ways to deal with them.
Absolutely. You get a lot of up and downs. Probably you get like bored at some point.
Yeah,
Another advice, you take some time off. Just switch off everything.
yeah,
Just have an holiday. Don't think about how can I architecture think or how can I test that code. Oh, forget about it. Just disconnect. Go on a
yeah,
holiday. Just go back, and then you have new energy.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Also, the other way, as you said, like do another project, do another languages,
yeah.
do even Android.
It's
If you
again
want.
about,
Yeah.
in line with what you said earlier. When I went to the manager with that idea, it wasn't a like a clear, like it wasn't something he would do on a day by day basis. But say, okay, if instead of you, I don't know, maybe resigning because you're, um, I don't know, stressed and demotivated, then yeah, sure, let's make sure we give you something like a different, fresh environment. So again, on that line, where just opening the conversation turns out to work, right, in some
Yeah.
way. So you work together to find a solution. But
Yeah. It's a, like the
that's the
advice,
thing. Yeah,
speak up,
exactly,
talk. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Fabio, one more question for maybe recruiters or other companies looking at this. If they want to work with you as an, or just reach out, uh, how can they find you?
So the main mean is LinkedIn, of course, why with my full name, and I have also a website. I'm not really updating it. It's fabiomigogna.com. Actually, I have to work on this. I need to find time. A priority for this. It's very important to be out there. Um, yep, that's the main to mean
Cool,
to connect with me.
cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Also, thanks for sharing your story, being open about it. I think we uncovered some important lessons here. I really enjoyed talking to you. So
Thank you, Bogdan. I really enjoyed.
thank you. And for the people watching, if you want to learn more, just visit us at essentialdeveloper.com. And there you can find a bunch of free resources to improve your iOS dev skills. And you can also find us on the social channels like YouTube and more. Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you.
good day and see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.